morning, Mr. Stancil.
Hey, good morning, Rebecca. Hey, before
Good
we
morning.
start with questions, there's just a couple of things that I want to touch on
Of course.
that have come up. So first of all, I want to talk about there's a rumor floating out there that HQ is expanding and there may be some offices that are moving. I want to touch on that. So when we did our decision to bring people back to the office 2 days a week, if everyone recalls, when the initial information went out about working from home due to COVID, yada, 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 there was an initiative by the governor to reduce the state's footprint in public spaces. And at that point, working from home was the philosophy. So we reduced the office space in HQ. Well, when that philosophy changed and we brought people back, one of the things that we noticed was we need to expand our office space. So there's office space available right across the street. If you've been to HQ, there's two buildings side by side. And we primarily are in the south building now. We moved CTA to the north building. We've also moved the pharmacy to the south building, and we were able to get rid of 2 leases by doing that. So we're now looking at, there's some space available in the north building, and we're looking at potentially expanding in some of that vacant space. We're in communication with the owners now, and that is going to be able to, if it all goes through as planned, that is going to give us some more space to even reduce more leasing spaces outside of the HQ area. So there were some questions about why hadn't this been talked about. Well, the reason we haven't talked about it, and there's some rumors out there, there's certain departments and all this kind of things, none of that's been developed or finalized, so we're still in the talking of it. But because the rumor is, the scuttle is out there, I wanted to address it on a much larger scale. There is some truth to the fact that we are expanding the space in HQ, but that's also going to allow us to, like we did with the pharmacy, like we did with CTA, there's some other leasing spaces we may be able to collapse into the area that we're going to expand. So I want to get that out there on this live chat. Then the other thing that I'm hearing is there's concern about, some of us on this call, the directors reading their answers. Well, I want to address that. When you ask specific questions that require specific answers from specific policies, the only way to get that right 100% of the time is to read the policy. Is it like the best TV kind of field? No, it's not. But the worst thing that we could do as your leaders is come on here and shoot from the hip, quoting policies, quoting things from policies, and make mistakes doing that. Because once we put it out there, is one memorialized in the recordings that you just spoke about that anybody can go and look at. And even if we make a change, being able to change that specific recording isn't possible. So the best way to get it right the first time is to read from the policy. So I know that I get this quite a bit, well, it sounds like you're reading, it sounds like it's scripted. Some answers have to be researched, some answers have to be read. So when you send in a question on the live chat, if it's a very detailed question, then it's going to take a detailed answer. So there's been talks that, well, we'll stop sending them in and we'll try to catch them cold on the call. That's not the answer. Because we're still, if it's a detailed question that we're going to be quoting policies, we need to be ensured that we're quoting what policy says. And the only way to do that is to read the policy to you. So I apologize for those that don't like that format, but that's the best way for us to ensure that we're getting it right, is to make sure that we're saying exactly what policy is saying, because we don't want to say one thing and policy says something different. That creates a conflict, creates confusion, and it creates a gotcha moment that none of us wants to be a part of. So I just want to throw those 2 things out there, and I know I'll be talking a little more to the yes questions for. It's a great question, and I'm glad that it was asked in this format. And one of the reasons that we do these live chats is because, one, it gives me an opportunity for everyone to hear the message. Because anyone's ever played the telephone game, if you're not all on the same call in the same room at the same time, you can even be in the same room. If you whisper something in one person's ear, by the time that gets through 30 people, that message has changed. So I want to make it perfectly clear on this call. My expectation is for every individual in this department to have a voice. My expectation is for every supervisor, every leader in this agency to respect staff having that voice and to listen to those voices. Now, if that is not happening, then we need to know about that, because I can tell you the faces that you're seeing on the screen, we all believe in hearing. Now, the other thing that we all have accepted in this role is that when you give everyone a voice, you also have to be prepared for what those voices say. Now, do I like everything that's said to me? Absolutely not. But I appreciate the fact that people are willing to use their voice. And that is my philosophy. That is my belief. That is this team's belief, that every leader in this department should embrace that same thing. Now, if you're in the middle of an emergency, and you want to go and use your voice, then that may not be the appropriate time to do it. So you may get a little pushback on it then. But if there's not an emergency and there's ample time, everyone in leadership is expected to have an open door. Everyone in leadership is expected to respect everyone's voice, whether it's the new person in the PT class or the most senior person retiring in the agency. It is the expectation of this leadership, and my expectation is that everyone is allowed to use their voice. And if you get any kind of retaliation or any kind of punishment for using your voice, as long as you use it professionally, then I need to know that. See, here again, this kind of ties into the question I was saying before. The best way for us to get feedback from staff is to ask. Now, I know there's people that are afraid to or have fears of answering surveys because they wanted to be anonymous. I hear all that. But it's like voting. If you have the opportunity to vote and you don't vote, how upset can you get with the outcome? So I get what the question is, that you're going to take a few people and make a decision based upon a few people. But the way I see that is, if we know that is happening, then that should encourage others to use their voice, because we have to go by what the responses are, because that's what we're looking for. If we give everyone the opportunity to respond to a survey and only 8 people respond to that survey, then are we not supposed to make a decision because only 8 people responded? No, we still need the information. We still need to move forward with the decision. Here's an opportunity for us to give everyone a voice, give everyone the opportunity to have input in the decision, but you have to take advantage of that input. So I don't know how else to do it. I can see where, if you're using 1,000 voices out of 6,500 plus, potential voices, is that mathing? No. But at the same time, we know there's just going to be people that aren't going to respond to surveys, or aren't going to use their voice, or going to choose to use their voice after their decision is made. But everyone has the opportunity, same opportunity to use their voice. So I encourage you, when we send out surveys, and we try to be very cognizant of the fact that we don't want to over-survey anybody. But when we're making decisions that impact everybody, we try to give everybody an opportunity to have input in that. And the best way to do that is through these live chats, is through surveys, is through, when I'm in facilities, giving out my phone number, giving people opportunities to text me, using emails. I just can't stress enough, use your voice, because your voice matters. And if you wait until after the decision has been made to use the voice, it goes back to voting. You can't complain about who's in office if you didn't vote, because you didn't use your opportunity to have input in who goes in office. So I encourage you, use your voice. Really, when it matters is when before the decision is made. So if whoever sent that question in, if you want to have further conversations about it, feel free to reach out to me. I really appreciate the question, because it gives me an opportunity to address that and encourage people to use the voice. But it also, I don't see any other way of doing it, and I'm open to hear suggestions. So yeah, let me jump in real quick.
Sorry, Mr. Stancil.
So to kind of go along with the email and the backgrounds and what we represent, we also have to be mindful of that in our offices. If you're displaying things in your offices, and I've seen this throughout when I'm doing the tours, that is questionable, you need to be mindful of that. There's those, you got a bunch of stuff on your walls too, but if you want to come look at these walls, they all speak to who I am. But if you are displaying like Thor and all these kind of things in your office, we need to question whether that's appropriate in the offices right now. Because, like for instance, I remember I was somewhere and I saw the Punisher. I don't know any office in the Colorado Department of Corrections where the Punisher would be appropriate to have on your office. Because if someone from the public walked in and saw that, what message are we sending to them? So I just want to piggyback off of the question about what can we put in our backgrounds. That's a great question, and I really was thinking about this one. So there's been a lot of talk today about, what are we doing to retain staff? Are we recognizing staff? How are we? Part of that is I, as a director, want to be able to trust staff and trust the staff have the integrity and the discipline to do what they're told. So when I put that message out that HQ staff was coming back, I think I made it clear in that message that I'm not going to be the 2-day-a-week police. I want to believe that staff will have the integrity to do what's right when it's supposed to be done. And so I look at the parking lot. My office faces the parking lot, and I look at the parking lot and I see there are some days that there are more vehicles in the parking lot than others. But I write that off as that not everybody's coming in on the same days of the week. The directors all know the expectations for making sure their staff are here on time and the right time frames on the right days. So I guess the basic question I would give to that is right now we're operating on the honor system. So I hope we don't have to get to the point where we're doing check-ins and check-in clocks and all that, because to me that's not an environment that I would want to work in. So we're talking about staff retention. We're talking about how we're going to give new staff. The biggest piece of that is being able to trust staff. So that's where we are now. Now, if we find that there are times when someone is abusing that, then of course we're going to do what we need to do to address that concern. But creating an issue of having someone posted at the front or going through checking off names of who's supposed to be who's not, we're not there yet. And I hope we don't ever get there, because I want staff to have integrity. So if you are staff and you're listening and you're one of those ones that may be abusing the system, please don't get us to the point where we have to go through the whole checking in and checking punch-ins and all that, because to me, that's not a good environment. I want to be able to trust staff. So if that didn't address your question, please feel free to reach out to me more. But I think the question was, what do we do, or do we have a mechanism to track? No, we don't have a mechanism to track that. And as far as tracking the outcome, if it's really meeting the outcome, our job is to be here, be accessible to the general public. So the fact that I see more cars in the parking lot now than I did before I made that decision to bring everybody back at least 2 days a week, that's proof enough to me that we're meeting our goal. Our goal is to be here as staff, and the public needs us. And there are more vehicles, more people here than it was before that 2-day message was put out. So.
Thank you. That's all the questions we have in the inbox right now. If I remember correctly, we also ended a few minutes early last month. Are you liking the idea of doing this every month, or would every 2 months be better to suit the needs?
So this is another one of those times where I want to hear staff's voice. This is an opportunity where I want to know what do you all recall? What do you all want from the exec team? Because we will do this as often as the staff want to hear it. But for those that have ever been in meetings with me, I don't like doing meetings just to be doing meetings. So if the once a month is sufficient, that's what staff wants, and we'll continue to do it. If we're not getting the questions, or if people are saying this is too often, the frequency is too often, then I'm okay with adjusting it. Because if we all recall, it used to be once every 3 months, and then there was more information that was being requested from us. So that's where we went to the monthly thing. But if you think we're at a point now where the information is sufficient to where we can do this quarterly, we can do it bi-monthly, I'm totally open to that.
Sounds good. The next regularly scheduled one is on Wednesday, December 17th at 11 o'clock.
Hey, Rebecca, before we end, I want to say that we're getting into the holiday season, and this is a time where it's a real high energy time for some, but it's also a very stressful time for others, where there's tight budgets, where there's loss of loved ones during this time, where there's not being around loved ones at this time. So I want to ask all staff to, let's look out for one another. You know, no matter, there's enough craziness going on in the world that we can disagree and we can argue about, but here's an opportunity for us to come together as DOC family and look out for one another. If you see something, say something. I would start out by saying something to the individual that you see the change in. But if that doesn't work, feel free to say something to others, because most of us see the holiday time as positive and times that we get to spend with our families. But there's a few in our family, POC family, that don't see these as positive times and struggle to make it through. So I encourage us all, no matter what our differences are, no matter what you feel about one another, we're all DOC family. We rely on each other. So let's do the right thing this year. Make sure that we're taking care of one another.